Hi guys, this is going to be a tutorial on how to edit your photographs from your point and shoot camera and just tweak them a little bit and make them look a lot better than what they did out of the camera. And there are definitely certain limitations between the two, but you can see just from the edited versus the unedited, you can drastically change certain aspects. Like the shadows are definitely one thing that you can improve on. And I'll just quickly go through here just to see the differences between there. You can watch the shadows again and just see that. And I added a bit more green, and a little bit more blue was brought back into that. Again, with the shadows here, you just add a lot more definition to the shadows and bring up the darkness so that it's a little bit more inviting and it looks more like a professional photograph. Here is where you start seeing the limitations. Right here in the shadows, you can of course bring them up to be like this. However, there is going to be a bit of grain that is going to be inside of here. You can't really expect something from black like that to be able to remove all that noise. Even with noise reduction, it's still pretty hard to get rid of that. You start losing a lot of details. You can also not bring back any overexposure. Like right here is not quite overexposed, but it's kind of bordering on it. If you have an area where it's overexposed and it's been completely washed out, since you're not capturing images in a raw format, you are unable to bring back any detail that is in those just because of the limitations of the JPEG, the compressed format between DSLRs and point and shoots. This is probably one of my favorite examples because you just look at this and you're like, oh, it's an okay photograph, and then this one you're like, wow, that's a really good photo. It brought up the shadows and brought back a lot of detail that was lost in here, and just kind of made it a bit more Walt Disney-esque, and I really like how that turned out. Here's another example of dark to light, and you can see there's a lot of artifacting in here, just because there's no information really in there to be had, so it's a little bit hard to use noise reduction and still retain those details. So for this one, I am going to demonstrate on, let's use the pier. And I'm also going to link down in the description to an article that I wrote on the same subject. It's just in print format, and I give a little bit more tips on how to make sure you take good photos. You can't completely disregard like composition and lighting and all that stuff. You need to take that into account also when you're taking your photographs. But I am just going to do a quick little analysis of this and just show you guys how I go about editing this picture. So right here, the first thing I notice is the shadows. A little too dark and we lose the details in there. So I'm just going to go over here to my shadows, and I'm just going to bring that up and bring that all that nice detail that we get, and zoom out and see what that did. Now this is more of a personal preference, but I actually quite like my photographs not as contrasty, so for me that actually looks pretty good. But I'll just add a little bit more of that black back in there so there's a little bit more contrast. And for this one, you can see it did a pretty good job of focusing on the Ferris wheel here, but it never hurts to maybe see what clarity will do to it and just see it brings out a little bit more dark and kind of makes him stand out a little bit more. So I will add that in there. And I'll usually add a bit more vibrance to it just to make those colors pop a little bit more. And that's pretty dark. I'm not sure if I like the sky that dark. Yeah, that looks okay. You can also, there's a difference between vibrance and saturation, just really saturation. I usually like vibrance a lot more, and see completely no vibrance, and then just kind of dial it into your preference. And that looks pretty good. For this photograph, I don't think there's really too much more that we really need to do to that. However, it was kind of sunny there, and I kind of dig the warm look on photographs, so I'm just going to raise the temperature up a little bit, add a little bit of yellow into our white back here, and it just makes it a bit, that's too much. This makes it a bit more more warm. And of course you can always take it down and be like, oh, it's blue. If you want to be true, that's probably about true with the white of the roller coasters coming through, but I kind of prefer my photos a little bit yellower. And still too much contrast for me. I really like my photographs kind of contrasted, but not too contrasted. And maybe add a little bit of exposure in there. Doesn't look too bad. Now if you wanted to add, maybe your sky wasn't as blue, you can go down here to the color right here and click on blue, and you can edit that, and maybe you want to make it, I don't know, green. You can kind of change that up, maybe make it a little more saturated if you just wanted to tweak that, or make it less saturated. I actually kind of like the look of that. And then if you saw some noise, and it's usually in the shadows. Is there really any in here? Not really, maybe a tiny bit, but if you wanted to just see what it would look like to reduce that, that looks pretty good. You just want to make sure that your details are not being lost. And that looks pretty good to me. And then just for funs, we're just gonna look, shadow opener is one of my favorites. I don't like shadows, but I think it looks pretty good. And just scroll through, maybe you want a vinaigrette on here. I kind of like the openness, so I'm not gonna put that on there. But just for fun, we can kind of see what the filters that I have on here, see if any of them strike my fancy or if I like any of them. And sometimes they kind of give you a little bit of inspiration, but I'm like, oh, maybe it looks good having a vinaigrette there, or a little bit of sepia tone, sepia. But I kind of like it true to that. One thing, see, there's a difference. This one's a little bit more natural, and the border that I added kind of depends on my mood. I guess I liked a bit more contrast when I edited that one, but I kind of like the way this one looks. There's no right or wrong way between any of this. So that is how you basically go about editing your point and shoot camera photos and make them a little bit better, make them a little bit more professional so they don't look so contrasty. And I don't know, everyone wants a better photograph. So if you guys have any requests on future tutorials you'd like to see, I know a little bit of everything, although my WordPress tutorials have been popular. There is more of that on the way. I do a lot of photography articles over on hub pages. Again, I will link that in the description if you are interested in seeing this tutorial in Word format. Sometimes it's nice to kind of see things not in a video. Sometimes it's nice to see things in a different format and see a couple extra tips that I have. I also have other tutorials on there, or articles of composition and stuff. Again, there are more videos on the way. Let me know if you have a suggestion, and I will see you guys all again in the next video really soon. Bye!